Hey, it's Simon Lees here again. It's time to give you another guitar lesson. This one's quite a tricky technique I'm going to show you. This is called sweep picking, or sometimes it's just called sweeping. So to demonstrate what it sounds like, I need... Got the sound. Okay, so here we go. Have you had enough yet? Okay, so this is the tricky thing about this technique is it uses quite a lot of coordination between your two hands. You can't rely on just one hand to pull this technique off. Your two hands have got to be completely in sync. What sweeping tends to get used for is playing arpeggios really fast. Arpeggios based on chord shapes. The chord shape I'm using on this example is an A minor chord shape. Now, if you picture a standard sort of A minor chord, what I've done is taken a normal A minor chord and move it up to the 12th fret. So that's the A minor shape there. So I've got my first finger on 13 on the B, second finger on 14 on the D, and third finger on 14 on the G. So it looks kind of the same pattern as an A minor chord. I've got to add a couple of extra notes to it. On the A string, I'm going to play 12, because the open string would sound a bit odd if I was going to... Plus I wouldn't be able to control how long the note lasts. So on the A string, I'm playing 12. And I'm hammering on to 15. So the 15 isn't strictly part of the A minor chord shape. It's not a note that you'd normally put your finger on. So that's an extra one. So that's the first couple of notes. So if I just play the notes normally, you got... So that deals with the two notes on the A string, the A minor chord shape, and then I'm going to put another couple of notes onto the thin E string, 12 and 17. And usually, well, a lot of the time, this the sweeping pattern gets played both ways, you know, so it's you can make it last a bit longer if you do that. Now the trick is, in fact, I'll use the bridge pickup as well. So. So picking it normally, that's kind of what you get. The sweep picking part is one way of looking at it. It's almost like a slow strum. So the idea is when you've played the first note, you let your plectrum literally crash into the next string, but don't let it pick that string straight away. So it stops momentarily. So you see my plectrum's coming to a rest. So if I hold my plectrum so you can maybe see it a little bit more clearly, I'm using these Jim Dunlop small stubbies, the 3mm plectrum, so it's quite a thick one. And the idea is, I say you just put the A string and let the plectrum literally hit the top of the D string. So don't let it go past the D string. The next thing I'm going to do is the hammer-on. So I'm going to use my little finger for that. So while my plectrum's sitting on top of the D string, I'm going to do that hammer-on. So, oops. You see, what the mistake most people tend to make when they're trying to do this for the first time is not letting the plectrum fall on top of the D string. What they do is they sort of do a pluck and then pull the plectrum away from the string, as you would if you were playing conventional technique. So that's what you've got to try and get yourself out of, and it's not easy, but as long as you know what you're trying to achieve, then at least you can work towards it. So So I'm plucking the A string, letting the plectrum hit the D string and stay there. And whilst that's happening, I'm hammering on with my little finger. Now, the next bit is the two middle strings. Now, if you were holding down an A minor chord, you'd have a different finger on each string. The way this pattern works is you're going to use your third finger to do both strings, and it has to roll from one string to the next. So it's the same idea. When I pick the D string, my plectrum hits the G string below. So again, I'm not pulling it back. I'm just letting it hit the string. And then to go onto the G string, I'm rolling my third finger down. Just keep the B string quiet a minute. It's difficult to show you what's going on here, but when I'm rolling my finger down, as my finger rolls onto the G string, it still touches the D string, but the D string comes away from the fret. When the string comes away from the fret, it can't vibrate, and that's what cuts the note off. That's what you want when you're doing the sweep picking. All the notes should sound separately. That's how it stops sounding like a chord. So. Okay, so put that together. So when I'm going onto the D string, when I'm picking the D string, my little finger's coming off. When you take your little finger off, if you get any extra noise, say if you might get you might end up pulling off back to your first finger. So you might hear the 12th fret on the A string ringing out. I use the edge of my thumb as I move down to pick the D string. The edge of my thumb just catches the A string, and that allows me to take my little finger off. Oops. Actually, it's probably slightly lower down. It's where my knuckle is on my thumb. That's what's touching the A string, so that allows me to take my little finger off without causing an extra noise that I don't want. Then I'll follow through, play the D string, roll my third finger down, and again follow through and play the G string. Again, if rolling your finger isn't enough to stop the D string from ringing as you follow through, I say what you want to see is the string actually parting company with the fret. So you want to see the string actually lift away from the fret. But if that doesn't happen, you can still use the edge of your thumb to dampen the D string as you go to play the G string. So you've got a couple of different ways of trying to keep the strings quiet as you go down. Okay, we're getting towards the thin strings now. So by the time I finish that, you want your plectrum to be against, it's actually sitting against the B string. So you want it to actually touch the B string there. The finger that's going to play the B string is my second finger, and that's on the 13th fret. So at that point, my third finger's coming off. And again, it's the same technique. I'm using the edge of my thumb to dampen the string that I've just played. So as I go to play the following string, the edge of my thumb just comes in and just touches the string. This is good to get your thumb in the right place for pretty much any kind of guitar playing. You shouldn't have your thumb a centimetre away from the strings when you're playing. You know, a lot of people kind of do this thing where they sort of, it's almost like they're scared to touch the strings. You know, you've got to get stuck in. You've got to allow your fingers to sort of get amongst the strings on both hands. So let's just recap. So you got, and then the thin E string. I mean, as an extra thing, I've got the tip of my index finger. When that goes onto the thin E string, the tip of my index finger just rests against the B string, and that's another way of keeping that string quiet. So take it a bit slower. Cool, so we're halfway point. The high note is 17 on the thin E string, and this is where you change direction. So this is something I found really useful, actually, because when I first saw this in a magazine, the guy said just hammer on your little finger, and that doesn't work. You tend to lose the feel of what you're trying to do. So if you actually switch direction, and I tend to do it quite sharply. So I'm going down all the way to the thin E string on the 12th fret, and then when my little finger goes on the 17, that's when I'm picking upwards. The technique works the same as you come up the strings. When I play that upstroke on the highest note, my plectrum is hitting the B string and then just staying against the B string. So whilst my plectrum's there, I then do a pull off. So I'm pulling off to my first finger, which is still on the 12th fret. Then I'm going to come back exactly the same way that I went up. So I've got 13 on the B. And again, as I play the B string, my plectrum is hitting the G string. My third finger's going to do the two middle strings again, and I've got to do that roll in reverse. So I'm going to start with my finger flat. Now it's actually bent slightly inwards, you know, so that's first joint of my third finger. It's not bent outwards like that. It starts off being bent inwards, so that the pad of my finger can press both of those middle strings down. So and then when I go to play the D string, I just roll my finger up. So it's the opposite of what I did on the way down. So okay, this is easy with a clean sound. Sounds a lot less messy, but it's a good way to practice. Put some distortion on, and any unwanted sounds they will drive you so mad it will kind of force you to do something about it. And then finally, my little finger just comes back up to the A string on the 15th fret, and that's the last note of the sequence. So say as my plectrum picks each string, it then jumps up and hits the string above. So it's basically when you're going through the whole arpeggio, my plectrum is only moving in one direction. It's only moving up. At no point do you kind of push it down again in between the notes. You know, you just got to let it. And then same idea on the way down. So it's kind of like a slow strum-ish. So when you put it together, you end up with. Now, what I like about this particular pattern, because there are loads of different sweeping patterns that you can do. The first thing I like about it is it's on 5 strings. You can get sweeping patterns that are on 3 strings, but the problem with those is you're having to change direction almost immediately. You know, you've already started and you've got to change direction. At least with the 5 strings, you get a chance to get into it before you have to change which way you're going. The other thing I like about this pattern is there are 12 notes altogether, and that means if you can split it up into sections, you know. So what I do, I think of it as 4 groups of 3. So as I'm playing it in my head, I've got 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Or a better way of doing it is diddly 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 diddly. You know, this is it's an easier way to sort of verbalise groups of 3 when you're playing them fast. So it's like diddly 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 diddly, you know, that type of thing. So that's something that really helped me get the hang of this technique, because before I was made aware of that, I was just thinking, oh, I've just got to play these notes and kind of hope for the best. But at least if you've got that in your head, if you know what you're aiming for, if you know what it is you're trying to make, what sound you're trying to make, you've got something to compare it with. So you can sort of listen to what you're actually playing and comparing it with what you know you should be hearing. So I should be hearing diddly 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 diddly, you know. Different chord shapes give you different arpeggios, you know. I mean, that one, I'm just changing to an A major shape. Now, A major, you would normally play with 3 fingers, but again, because of the speed, it's easier to actually use your 3rd finger and just roll it across those the D, G, and B strings, and you can get a major shape then. So. So there you go, that's sweeping. I say we can try different chord shapes or parts of chord shapes. Chord shapes are great because that's kind of what arpeggios are. They're based around chord shapes, chord shapes that you're probably known for years. You know, when you've been that you learn when you were a beginner. So yeah, that's the technique. But I say the most important thing is to make sure that when you pick, you don't let your plectrum sort of jump back or jump away from the string below. It's literally just got to crash into the next string. Now I've got my thumb too close to the string, so if you get that sound, you know, you've got to maybe have a bit more plectrum sticking out. Okay, so there you go, sweet picking. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next lesson.